Welcome everybody, it's Rev. We are going to talk about Blackwings and a few deck building changes I've made to Blackwings that I think are, quite frankly, really fucking good and fix a lot of the problems that Blackwings have. Actually, let me step that back. I won't say they fix a lot of the problems that Blackwings have, they just make those problems a little less bad. So, I want to start with a story, and it it centers around James Arc. So a long time ago, James Arc said something which not a lot of people took into consideration, but he said, "Please listen." And I saw that and I said, "You know what? What's the worst that could happen? I'll listen." He asked me nicely. He said, "Please." So, uh, skip forward a few months. I was looking at the Edison format Discord. That's run by Keegan. Some call him Swaggy Man Keegs. And I saw James Arc talking. So when I see James Arc talking, this time in the Blackwing channel, I listen. And what he said was in response to someone saying, Blackwings, they're just whirlwind dependent. It's a whirlwind dad deck. He said, I don't necessarily think they're whirlwind dependent. I think they're normal summon dependent. And this was probably over 9 months ago, and I started thinking about that, and I thought about all of the different iterations of Blackwings that have come out, whether or not it's hybrid or upstart builds, Yada builds, whatever might happen. And the nice guy he is, kind of got into it with somebody, and they said, something back to him, and argued that it was a whirlwind deck, and he said, "I think you might be ass. I think you just might be ass." So I thought, that was just a really, James Arc's such a nice guy. He didn't say the person was ass. He said they might be ass. And he said he thinks they might be ass. So it just goes to show the type of person James Arc is. He left it open to interpretation. He didn't say you're ass. He said I think you might be ass. So I after listening and please listen, okay? Just I implore you, just listen. When you think about Blackwings being a normal summit reliant deck, how would you fix that? Well, the first option is to run actual starters. A traditional Blackwing list doesn't necessarily have any one card starters. Shura is not a one card starter. I mean, it's a monster, but it doesn't start your engine. It basically has to get engraved to start. Uh, Sirocco, sometimes you can't even play turn one if you're going first. Vayu's not a starter. Gale's a fantastic card, but it's not a starter. Kaloot's not a starter. Blizzard's like the worst thing in your opening hand ever. Boar is a 1700 vanilla, more or less, and it's not a starter. So what you have to start doing is looking for uh, typically trigger and ignition effects. So that's where Grepher, Rhoda, and Armageddon Knight come in. And there are two builds that I kind of want to discuss today. The first one being the one that was just on the screen, and the second one really playing to two different strengths. And I haven't figured all of this out yet. And if the side looks a little wonky, it's under construction. But I'm going to go through what I think is core and what I think is flex in these types of decks and what I'm most uncertain about. And maybe some of the choices that you can make in the side deck if you think certain things like two knocks just ain't it, which I kind of understand. It's probably overkill, quite frankly. But just kind of wanted to discuss mostly um, really a five to six card package, which is Grepher, Armageddonite, Necrogardna, Rhoda, Burial. And I think this five and or six, if you're running two Grepher card package, is fantastic in Blackwings. Not good, it's fantastic. Because Grepher, again, doesn't solve Blackwing problems, but it allows you to start and not have your asshole blown out by a bottomless. So, Grepher, pitch a Vayu or a Sirocco or a Necro, whatever it might be, turn one, just gives you so much more latitude and flexibility to do whatever you want. It's searchable by Rhoda, so that's another two cards that are starters. The other thing is Armageddonite turn one. So With this particular build with two blizzards, the utility this card has is nuts, let alone being searchable. So you have three targets with Rhoda, all of which are good in their own right. Sometimes you would just want to search an Necro Guard and like to either discard it or like set it and like have additional defense. Like a late game Rhoda into normal summon Armageddonite when you just like even have a Sirocco in the grave is insane. Because then you're getting like an Arma and like a one like a free Vayu Synchro basically with an Armed Wing. There's times where you Armageddonite turn one and you have like blizzards in hand and you just send a level 4 and your blizzards are now just good cards and not bricks for several turns while you get your engine set up and uh your deck kind of in motion. So I think this package is like from all of the stuff I've tested in Blackwings, this is like the uber nuts clean. It feels so good. Um, and Burial gives you extra ceiling and like let's not forget like just normal summoning an Armageddon Knight turn one and sending a Necro is a good play. Like that's just already a good play. And like being able to like normal Arma like send Necro and then like attack into like maybe a Ryko or something you know about or whatever it might be is typically a lot better than what you might be able to do with a Shura or a Bora, which is also kind of what you want to draw. But again, what if you don't have a level 4 bird? You just have so much more flexibility and so many more options to get a good opening hand with this type of build that I mean I'm not sure I'd play Blackwings without like these five cards anymore. Like they just solve so many issues. Keep on saying solve. They help make less bad so many issues with Blackwings. Now I kind of want to talk about some card choices and I think I was going to do gameplay when I was making this video, but I actually kind of just want to talk for longer, so I actually don't think I'm going to do gameplay. Um, because there's actually a lot I want to fucking talk about here. So let's go to let's talk about this build first. Now, what I would consider core for Blackwings, I kind of sorted it. So the top row of cards you don't cut, you never cut them. You don't cut three Shura if you're running Whirlwind. Uh, the first Grepher is always better than the second, so you need at least one. You need at least one Armageddonite. It's a fantastic top deck. It's a great starter. It can turn on Blizzard. It can send Necro. It's the Giga Nuts. It's fucking amazing. Necro, I experimented with a lot. I actually tried plenty of builds without Necro. In hindsight, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. I think just Necro is good enough. It can help prevent you from getting OTK'd. It's additional burial fodder, so it gives this a little more ceiling. It helps protect your Grepher at times. Now, what I would consider the flex spots in the monster lineup are the second Blizzard and the second Bora, which is why I have another build up here, which takes a little bit different of an approach. So it basically cuts the second Blizzard and second Bora for an additional value and an additional Grepher to make deck dev a more consistent threat. So again, I haven't quite figured out which build is better. They're trying to accomplish two different things. So in this build, your burial is going to be better, your deck dev is going to be better, so on and so forth. In the build number one, you have two blizzards. So Blizzard is just going to be an additional kind of ceiling power play card that you have, but you unfortunately have to run an additional kind of mid card, which is Bora. But this package makes your deck devs worse, your burials worse, but makes your whirlwinds better, and makes you more normal summon reliant. So it's significantly closer to traditional Blackwings, albeit this list, in my opinion, being significantly better than any Blackwing list out there at this point. Um, Now, again, it depends on what kind of list you want to play. Do you want uh, that second Blizzard to be your more powerful card? Do you want a slightly more consistent Whirlwind package with that additional Bora, as well as an additional Whirlwind search into Blizzard in the event that you drew the first one first before getting your Whirlwind search? It really depends on if you want it to be closer to Blackwings or you kind of want to turbo out deck devs. Second, we'll talk about the spells. 0% of these spells are cuttable. You're stupid if you're not running every single one of these spells. No exceptions. Unless there's some huge meta shift. I would never cut any of these spells. Um, so let's move on to the traps. Uncuttable, 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 uncuttable. Where you have flexibility is these 6 traps. So if you'll notice, well, I didn't order these the exact same. So if you'll notice, the 6 traps at the end, kind of like the flex spots, are going to be at the end. So I'd consider like maybe like this, like order it like this. Whatever's at the end of the monster lineup, whatever's at the end of the spell and trap lineup, so on and so forth. But um, none of these traps up until Mirror Force or up until Icarus attack are cuttable. Um, but what I was going on about like the first Grepher being better than the second also goes for a lot of these cards too. So the first Icarus attack in a deck like this is better than the second. The first deck dev is better than the second. The first Impriz is better than the second. Personally, for whatever reason, Icarus attack just doesn't feel as good, and we're not even cutting that many birds like from a traditional Blackwing list. Like assuming you're on like 2 Vayus and like the full Blackwing package, um, you're only down 3 birds in this build. But it seems significantly harder to resolve Icarus attack in this deck. So honestly, like the only reason I'm on 2 of them right now is because you just need like generic game 1 removal. But if you start playing this deck and it's not like a match where you're siding in crows, like you'll start to notice how inconsistent Icarus feels. And I think part of the reason for that is because it's competing with deck dev. So, this is kind of like like in a traditional Blackwing list, you'd typically be on like 3 Icarus and maybe 1 deck dev, but because the deck dev is also competing like as a cost with like some of your big birds, Icarus just doesn't feel as consistent with this. Um, so I honestly think like you could try to play one, but I'm just not sure what I would replace it with because Icarus is at its best game 1 and it's frankly not even good in a lot of matchups game 2 or 3. Um, Deck dev is always gonna, I won't say always, but in like 99% of the scenarios going to be at its best in game 1. I'm not sure I'd ever play this deck without 2 deck devs. Like this is a more consistent deck dev deck than Vayu. It's more consistent as a deck dev deck than traditional Blackwings because you get the Grepher package, you get the Vayu package. You're of course playing like the standalone Siroko's, but you also get the supplemental Kalut, like Shura or Kalut, whatever type thing, Kalut, plus like the Blizzard. So there's just a million and one different ways to enable deck dev. Um, so I think this is probably the most consistent deck dev deck. Something I've been considering is whether or not an oppression could find its way into the main, which I certainly think it could. Because when you really look at this, I mean, we're not special summoning like much at all. I mean, we're cutting 2 Boras and 2 Blizzards, and the special summons we're adding are largely Vayu. Um, they're all Vayu actually. Like we're not. I mean, I guess technically Grepher can be a special summon, but like we don't have like Plague or the Return package in here. That's a completely different deck in my opinion. Um, so there could be a world where like you fit an oppression in here and maybe like you take out a Sticky Icky or like a Dimpriz or something. But frankly, I think in terms of order of cutability, I don't think I'd probably ever cut 2 deck dev in this variant. Um, I honestly think like the 2 deck devs feel better than like the 2 Icarus. It's just like conditionless removal. It's like you just see a card, play a card, and that's like a very important thing in my opinion. So whether or not like an Icarus finds its way out and you like move an oppression in somewhere, I've also toyed with like even siding the Icarus because it's fantastic in certain matchups, but it's just not good in a lot either. Same with like Dimpriz. Dimpriz shit in certain matchups, bottomless bad in certain matchups. But and then kind of to talk about how I'd flex the traps in the other list. So I think this list supports uh, Icarus, like the 2 Icarus, like perfectly. Like I just don't feel like even with the addition of like these 2 birds and like the recursion with Blizzard, I don't feel like I'm like quote unquote bricking on Icarus all that often. I do think the deck dev is less consistent, so there could be some sort of consideration for moving a deck dev to the side and an oppression to the main, but like this is a like marginally worse oppression deck than the other build as well. So I'm not entirely sure. I think you can enable deck dev very, very easily in this. But again, the two Dimpres, especially game one, just feels really good. Like you just sometimes need to take the pressure off and just have a battle trap. The other thing I think worth talking about is like the discard package of like the Sirokkos and two Vayus and a Necro. Um, I don't think you necessarily need three uh, if you're on this slim of a Greffer, or we'll call it the warrior package, I guess. Um, and you're bringing out a lot more values with both of these builds with Shura actually. Believe it or not, like if you play like I don't know a dozen matches with either of these builds, um, as opposed to traditional value where you're sending most of the stuff with Arma, Greffer, and Ryko Mills, like you're actually dumping a fair number of values in the grave just with Shura resolutions because you're going to be resolving your Shuras like quite often because it's Blackwings. All right, so onto the side. The side I think is significantly less defined. So there are a few things which I would consider core, and there are a lot of things that I'm just experimenting with at this point. So I haven't run Starlight Road in the longest time. I just put it back in yesterday, and honestly, it's been fucking amazing so far. But it's just a high roll card. Like you're just gonna go on streaks where this card is feels uncuttable, and then you're gonna go on a streak where it's like the worst card in your 55 by a lot. So what I would consider uncuttable is Dinah. DD Warrior Lady, because you're running Rhoda, is actually very good. It's an orb out, and it's actually just straight up good into a lot of matchups, which you wouldn't expect. Whether or not it's, of course, stuff that runs orb, whether or not it's like hero beat, something that you need like non-targeting removal for, um, like what the fuck is it called, like Titanial or something. Um, so it comes in more matchups when you think about it than you'd think. Um, so I think it's a very, very good card. Also, in terms of uncuttability, just for honestly Machina alone, as well as an Orb out plus a non-normal summon Orb out, Cyber Dragon's uncuttable. The two Crows are uncuttable. Now, I do want to talk about the monster lineup. I don't think you can add many more monsters than this because the way this deck is built is you can't really side more than like one or two monsters in any given matchup. There's like once in a blue moon, and when I say monsters, I'm not counting Crow, by the way. I consider this a trap. So like you can't really side like more than one to two of the first three cards here, the Cyber Dragon, DD Warrior Lady, and Fossil Dyna, other than like once in a blue moon. Trying to think of what matchup it was, but I was forced to like side all three of these in at one point. I think it was something that where I needed like all the different types of removal. But when you look at this monster lineup, there's really just not all that much that you want to side out. Like the most common stuff being second Blizzard and second Bora. And then this like gets even tighter because if it's a matchup where you need to prioritize deck dev, there's like virtually nothing you can side out. Like I've experimented with like the third Shura, but um, it really depends. Um, the other cards, so I'll say the first five cards are uncuttable. Book of Moon is a flex spot. I like it right now. I think the second knock is absolutely a flex spot. I don't think it's 100% necessary. The first knock might not even be necessary, but I do like the targeted removal for stuff that is going to set a lot versus you. Pardon me. Um, Road is definitely a flex spot. I like it right now, especially if you're like jumping into ladder or something. And then I would say oppression and dusts are absolutely not flex spots. You can't not run these. Now, I do want to talk about pulling the rug. So there has been a lot of debate on whether or not pulling the rug is in a good spot right now, and people say with the combo meta, it might get usurped by something like Mask of Restrict, which it could. I just frankly haven't experimented with Mask of Restrict as a stand-in for this card enough yet. And I think there's enough stuff where you want to bring in rug, um, where it's still good. I mean, maybe I could go like one rug, one mask, because the mask is good into a lot of combo decks, but it also just has a lot of like negative synergy with your deck. Like there's just a lot of times where I want to tribute, like whether or not it's even just for like a Sirocco, whether or not it's for deck dev, like Icarus, like all kinds of shit. Um, and I just don't like that whole negative synergy component, but I will, you know, give the nod where the nod is due that um, Mask is very good in certain situations. I just haven't figured out whether or not it's better than Rug or whether or not like a 1-1 split would be better. Um, so on the final kind of closing thoughts with how the side deck is constructed is it has to be very monster slim. So we're only running really 3 monsters in the side and then 12 traps since I'm considering DD Crow a trap. Um, so with that being said, what I would consider flex, I'll put at the back of my side deck. So I'd consider at a bare minimum the first knock a flex, then at a bare minimum the first rug a flex, and I'd probably want to keep one rug almost at all times, just because like even if it's bad into like certain combo, like it's just still good into like Diva Hero, still good into Machina, like the first rug is still good into like traditional monarchs, still good into hero frogs. So um, I'm not sure, but those are my thoughts. I'm gonna close it out here. Let me know what you think, more specifically, honestly, of like this 5 card package, like Burial, Grepper, Arma, Necro, and Rhoda. And don't just run your mouth about it. Like actually go try it, and then like let me know what you think. Because the Yugioh is not going to really get you that far, but like I really do think this is fucking good. Like, and I think like a lot of Blackwing lists should be playing some iteration of this type of list. It just really, really helps with the normal summon reliance. Thanks for watching. I'm out.